What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today, and the road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams hits double digits today, and we are on to the surprise of the season last year. We are in Tempe, Arizona. We're going to be talking about the Arizona State Sun Devils out of the Big 12 Conference. My name is Nate Bope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. Thank you so much for clicking on this video and helping to support the channel. If you'd like to support the channel even further, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when videos are uploaded, because turning notifications on during prediction season ensures that you won't miss an upload, and you especially don't want to miss one of your favorite team. I am a sports media graduate delving on into the professional world of sports media, and if you want to see all the cool stuff I do in that realm, as well as get updates on what goes on this very YouTube channel, you can follow me on any social media, Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it, and Instagram. It's at TailgateNate29, and if you'd like, you can even email me, tailgatenate29@gmail.com. Thank you so much for supporting me and the channel, however you may be doing so. Everybody had this team wrong last year. It's the Arizona State Sun Devils, coached by Kenny Dillingham. Everyone had this team wrong last year. I had this team wrong last year. You had this team wrong last year, probably except if you were a Sun Devil fan. I think maybe even some Sun Devil fans were like, okay, this season, we'll see how it goes. I think a lot of people thought Kenny Dillingham was going to take a little bit of time to work into this system, work into this program. Nope, they explode right away, and Kenny Dillingham is going to be one of the best coaches, one of the faces of the best coaches in the country for the coming years, and Arizona State has a great chance to repeat what they did last year in 2025. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we're first going to go through a roster overview in which the offense is going to be over here and the defense is going to be over here. Then we'll go through and predict Arizona State's football schedule. I'll tell you what I think about the Sun Devils in 2025. So numbers right below me to turn your attention to. Returning production numbers are according to ESPN, and they factor in transfers up to a certain point. Recruiting and transfer portal class ranks are according to 24/7 Sports. Let's talk about this returning production number. 79% overall. That is one of the top marks in the country. In fact, it's second, only behind the Clemson Tigers. You know how much I like the Tigers this year, so does it translate on over? Let's see. We'll find out. Let's go ahead and start talking about the offense. Your offensive coordinator is Marcus Arroyo, and Sam Leavitt is going to be back again this year. As a redshirt freshman last season, Sam Leavitt, 2,885 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions last year. That's a touchdown-interception ratio of 4-1. Hey, pretty darn good there. Around 62% completion percentage, but he's a dual-threat quarterback. He was also the team's second leading rusher last year with around 450 yards and 5 touchdowns of production when he decided to take that thing outside of the pocket and run. I think Sam Leavitt's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country this year, period, end of story. As a redshirt freshman last year, he was a very good piece to this offense, and you do lose Cam Scadaboo. Touch more on that later. But I think Sam Leavitt, look, this was a run-first team last year, and it was because you had Scadaboo in that backfield. I'm not necessarily suggesting this is going to be a pass-first team this year, but I do think Sam Leavitt is going to throw more than 350 passes this year. He could throw close to 400, and if that's the case, I think you could see this guy get a 3,500 yard, if not, if he really explodes, 4,000-yard season this year. I think Sam Leavitt is that good, and I think he's got that talented of pieces around him. Yes, you do lose Cam Scadaboo, and I think he's going to be nearly impossible to fill in those shoes to the fullest. 1,711 yards, 21 touchdowns on the ground, and a very versatile player. 605 yards and 3 touchdowns as the team's second leading receiver. He even threw a touchdown pass in the college football playoff game that the Sun Devils were in last season. However, you still do have a backfield that I think is pretty darn capable this season. Kyson Brown is going to be returning as the second leading rusher among running backs out of this team last season. He did, got to find his stat line. There it is, 351 yards and 2 touchdowns for Kyson Brown last year. But the guy that I think is going to be leading the charge in the backfield this year is an Army transfer by the name of Kanye Udo. Now, how did you transfer out of Army, sir? I would like to know. However, in 179 carries, 1,117 yards, and 10 touchdowns for a Black Knight team that also surprised a lot of people last year, and at points, people were talking about them rivaling with Boise State to be that group of 5 team to get into the college football playoff. It obviously did not turn out that way, but he is going to be coming in here, average 6.2 yards per carry. I think he's going to be a very good back for this team in 2025 to pair with Kyson Brown. You have a tandem back there instead of just one guy. Jordan Tyson is working back from injury that kept him out of the college football playoff game last year, but he is going to be the leader of this wide receiving core yet again. 1,101 yards last season, 10 touchdowns last year, and really was the best, biggest primary guy for you. There has to be a true number 2 that steps up in place of just anybody. There really was no true second option behind Jordan Tyson this year. I mentioned Cam Scadaboo. Yeah, he was the second option, but I'm talking about in the wide receiver room. It's great when you have a tailback that can catch passes out of the backfield like Scadaboo. Udo did a lot of that at Army as well for a team that threw a little more often than they usually do. Kyson Brown can do that as well. But you need guys like that in the wide receiver room. Xavier Gilroy was the closest thing they had to it, but he only was able to get 339 yards and only had 22 catches last year. Now, that's not knocking Xavier Gilroy. He's a good player, had a solid season last year. Also 5 touchdowns through the air, second on the team. But you need a guy to step up and at least get, I don't know, maybe 600 yards of production. Jordan Tyson's going to be the guy. Everyone knows that. You need someone to step up and fill in as that number 2 wide receivers. Well, a lot of transfers are going to be coming in. You are going to get Malik McClain back. He only had 2 catches last year, but is supposed to be thrown into a starting role this year. And as far as transfers go, Jalen Moss, Noble Johnson, and Jaron Hamilton all come in through the transfer portal. I think this is a wide receiver room that's a lot deeper than it was last year. I think they're going to find that number 2 wide receiver. Who's it going to be? Have to remain to be seen. Shimon Medier is going to be back to play tight end for this team after a solid season last year, 32 catches, 306 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think he's going to play a very similar role here in 2025. And you do get Kamari Anderson. That's going to add some depth to that tight end room. On the offensive lines, returning production keeps coming back. 4 starters return, and 2 big body transfers are going to enter with a ton of young, really impressive talent on this 2 deep. Again, you get those 4 starters back, stupidly experienced players. And Jameto Obigbo, apologies for mispronunciations, is coming over through the transfer portal, and he should slot in nicely to that left guard position. A lot of young talent awaiting in the wings. I think it's a good offensive line and a good room overall for Arizona State and what should be one of the better offenses that we see in 2025. On the defensive side, your defensive coordinator is Brian Ward, and the biggest thing that I think Arizona State can work on from last year to this year is enhancing that pass rush. They only had 24 sacks of production last year, and there were a lot of moments in that college football playoff game against Texas where maybe if they got an extra sack or 2, they probably were going to be able to win that game. But you get a ton of your grade A defensive linemen back from last season, and a lot of guys that helped you lead your team in sacks. Clayton Smith led your team in sacks. He's coming back. Elijah O'Neal, he's going to be coming back. And just a ton of experience elsewise. Prince Dorba, Jacob Rich Kongaika, CJ Fight, even a transfer of Mike Hill Gardner, and I could go on and on. All of those names I just listed, by the way, are at very least juniors. You have to go quite a ways down in this 2 deep depth chart, even 3 deep before you find a freshman or sophomore. This is a very deep, very experienced defensive line room, and I think it's going to see some massive improvement, especially in that pass rush this season. Now, your leading linebacker in Caleb McCullough is going to be gone. 3rd leading tackler last year for you, had 76 tackles and a sack to pair along with 2 interceptions from last season. But listen to this linebacking trio that they have coming back. Keyshawn Elliott was masterful last season. 65 tackles, 2 sacks. You also did have a pick last year as well. Jordan Crook is back. He had 57 tackles as the top 10 tackler, had a pick last season as well. And then Cyrus Fiaseu will also be coming back here to this room. Another huge, vital part to this defense last year. He came away with an interception as well. It could be one of the best overall groups in the entire nation. I've talked about linebacking duos and things of that are going to be really good. This could overall be one of the better linebacker rooms that we do see. Now, the other talent behind those three are fairly, well, actually, they're not even fairly young. Martell Hughes is a true sophomore, but he's going to be a really talented player. Again, this is a linebacker room that can go pretty deep as experience would see it play out. Now, corner depth at Arizona State was stretched last year, according to a lot of different various sources. So I do think you're going to have to see some of these corners step up. Well, your interception leaders in Keith Abney and Javon Robinson are both going to be returning to this defense from last season. Both of them were top 10 tacklers. Both of them had 3 interceptions last season. So there you go. Corner depth is yet a year more experience, and I think they're going to have a lot of talented guys in that room this year. Behind Abney and Johnson, one of those is the pretty talented transfer in Nyland Green. Speaking of transfers, Kindrich Breedlove is going to transfer into play nickelback, but your safety duo and your top 2 tacklers of Miles Rouser and Xavier Alford return for, I think, one of the best defensive backfield or safety tandems that you're going to see in the country this season. Both of them are seniors this year, so really experienced. They've seen a lot of football, and both of them just quite simply played their tails off last season. Rouser was on the cusp of 100 tackles, and Xavier Alford intercepted a couple passes while defending 5 passes last season. So a lot of really good pieces. Didn't even mention, one second here. Again, didn't even mention just some more of the depth that they did have this year. Warren Montana, Rodney Bimmage are 2 very good, talented young pieces. Now, you are going to be losing a guy by the name of LaTerrence Welch. He is gone off the program, was second on the team in passes defended. But again, I think this is the defensive backfield. That corner depth, I think, is going to get better this year. And that overall safety room, to pair along with the entirety of the defensive backfield, I think makes for a really good group. Kenyon Floyd is going to be back to punt, and Jesus Gomez transfers in to kick because kickers are people too. We got to show them some love. Offensively, as long as Sam Levitt takes another jump in his production, they're going to be a really good group. I think they have good places in lieu of losing Cam Scattaboo, and I think you're finally going to get a number 2 wide receiver behind Jordan Tyson this year. On the defensive side, the pass rush should improve, and you can go very deep, especially in that defensive front 7, but in pretty much every position that you have on the football field for the Sun Devils this year. Right over here is the Arizona State Sun Devil football schedule for 2025. But before we dig on into this, let's look at some numbers down below me, courtesy of FanDuel Sportsbook. No, I am not telling you to go place your money. You do whatever you want with your money. It is your money after all. Just some numbers to give you a little bit of context as to how good the odds makers think Arizona State is going to be this year. Well, plus 650 odds to win the conference in the always wide open, wild west of the Big 12 is actually tied for second. They're tied with Baylor and Texas Tech, and they sit behind Kansas State and Utah for odds to win the Big 12. So even though they won it last year, they have a ton of talent returning. The odds makers are not favoring them to win the conference. Interesting. Very interesting. That win total is at 8.5, which again feels very low, but in the Wild West of the Big 12, you never know what's going to happen. Before we dive on into the conference slate, we do have some non-conference games to get out of the way, and I think Arizona State wins all 3 of them this year. They should be able to beat Northern Arizona, and then you have to go on the road to play Mississippi State. I don't think it's going to be a great year for Jeff Lebby, and I do think Arizona State's got a little bit more talent than what Mississippi State does have. Blake Shapen is going to be coming back. He is a graduate at quarterback, but again, you're retooling a lot of your offensive line. You basically have an entirely new group of lead wide receivers that are coming in through the transfer portal, albeit they're all some pretty darn talented names, and some good defensive pieces back. You're getting in some transfers to fit in. I think it's a little bit too early. If Mississippi State's going to surprise this year, I think they're going to get their groove later in the season. Even though this is the game at home, the cowbells are going to be ringing loud. Give me the Sun Devils to be able to go on the road and beat the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I picked this upset. I really liked Texas State last year, and while I still do like the Bobcats this season to be one of the top competitors in the Sun Belt Conference, not going to make the same mistake twice, and this one for Arizona State is at home. I do think they are going to beat the Texas State Bobcats and the Arizona State Sun Devils, get out of non-conference play unscathed. Then you immediately dive on into a slew of really difficult conference games. And the first one coming up here is on the road against the Baylor Bears. Oh boy. Let me tell you, do I love this Baylor team entering 2025. They got Sawyer Robertson coming back at quarterback, and I think he's going to take a big step in the right direction. Josh Cameron is back. You get Kobe Prentice as a transfer into this wide receiver room. We'll see if eligibility is restored to Ashton Hawkins. Some pretty good pieces in that running back room as well. Defensively, you're going to get a lot of pieces back, especially in that secondary, and that's where they can be Arizona State in this game. Now, I do think that there are a lot of other pieces that Baylor's got to account for here, and I think that there's going to be a couple games where Sam Levitt, much like what Cam Scadaboo was able to do last year, where now I believe that duty is Sam Levitt's to have this year, of putting the team on their back and saying, let's go squad, bolstering up and pushing forward for the win. I think this Baylor team is going to be really, really good. There's a reason they're tied with Arizona State in odds to win the Big 12 Conference, but I think Arizona State's got a lot more in place. They don't have a lot of transfers trying to fit in, and while still early, you might be trying to finish working some of those things out, as well as I think depth, especially if Ashton Hawkins' eligibility isn't restored, is a little bit beaten in that wide receiver room at Baylor, and for all of those reasons, as well as I think the pass rush improving here for Arizona State, I think they're going to go on the road, get a big time win at Baylor to kick off conference play. Then you get to come right back home and play the TCU Horned Frogs, another team that, again, could make some noise in the Big 12 Conference. TCU, hey, they've got themselves a lot of really darn good pieces coming back, but this one is a home game for the Arizona State Sun Devils, and I just don't see them losing this one. The Horned Frogs, solid surprise last year. They were an 8-3 team. This is going to be another tough game, but again, I do think Arizona State is able to survive Josh Hoover and a pretty darn good group of wide receivers. I think that secondary is going to be able to hold. You get your first bye week of the year, and I think it comes at an absolutely perfect point because now you have to go on the road and play the Utah Utes. And here is the thing about the Utah Utes. I think everyone, well, maybe not everyone, there are a lot of people that are going to count out Utah State. Look at what they did last year. Kyle Whittingham is starting to fall off, this, that, and the other. No, Kyle Whittingham is one of the best coaches in the entire country. And while a bulk of that offensive line room does return, they're always going to have pretty good tight ends at Utah. They have for a long time. And look, you get a lot of talented transfers into this room. Devon Dampier, he was at New Mexico, and it's not necessarily what he did passing that surprises you. It's what he does with his legs. He was a 1,000-yard rusher as a quarterback with the Lobos last year, and I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Not to mention you have Wayshawn Parker coming over here, really good freshman running back for Washington State last season, an entirely revamped wide receiver room that I think is going to be pretty darn good here in 2025, on top of, well, you know how good Kyle Whittingham defenses are. I think all of that, as well as the fact that it is on the road, is going to play into the hands here. I think Utah is in for a really, really big bounce back season anyway, but Arizona State's going to give them a run, going to give them a battle. I just think Utah wins this one, and sometimes that's the reality of the Big 12. But you come back home and play the Texas Tech Red Raiders. A lot of hype surrounding what Texas Tech has done entering this season, specifically through the transfer portal. You get Baron Morton back at quarterback, but all of these pieces are coming in through the portal. Quentin Joyner is in at running back. Reggie Virgil, my apologies, is in at wide receiver. Romello Height and David Bailey, some of the big pieces they brought in on the defensive line. Cole Wisniewski is a transfer from North Dakota State. That was a really, really talented safety during his time there. This is a Texas Tech team and a Joey McGuire team that headed out of the park in the transfer portal. I think Arizona State is going to prevail here. This is one of those coin flip games. I really mean it. I like what Texas Tech did a lot this year. Again, just the reality of the Big 12, right? It's the Wild Wild West. Flip a coin, up lands on heads. We'll go with the home team there, Arizona State. We'll go ahead and win that one. Houston is up next, and the Cougars, I think, still have a little bit more building to do under Willie Fritz. Some solid pieces there, but I do think Arizona State will get that one done on home field. On the road against Iowa State, love what the Cyclones have coming back this season. Rocco Becht is going to be coming back to play quarterback for you. Now, you do lose that wide receiver duo, but another duo transfers in. Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend, I think, are still going to be some solid pieces. You get Carson Hansen and Abu Sama back in that running back room. Lots of good pieces coming back for you on defense, and the Cyclones pull off the win at home against the Arizona State Sun Devils for the second loss in the Sun Devils season. you do get your bye week and you get to finish out with honestly a pretty easy slate. This is a pretty front loaded conference schedule, maybe apart from Iowa State, but make no mistake, I don't think West Virginia is going to be a pushover this year. Rich Rodriguez is coming back to coach a team in which, well, he has coached before. He has been at West Virginia before. There are a lot of questions that you got to figure out here with this team, breaking in a lot of new breaking in a lot of new, offensive line pieces. You have some solid pieces in the wide receiver room. Your entire, though, basically defensive back seven, that's linebackers in the secondary room, are going to be revamped through the transfer portal, albeit with some pretty talented transfers. I don't think it's going to take much time for Rich Rod to figure things out here with West Virginia. But I really do believe that this just might not be the year for West Virginia to really explode. Maybe look at that for next year. A solid team, yes, but a team that Arizona State's going to beat. On the road at Colorado, I think could be tough for a couple of various reasons, but just quite simply put, not going to be the same team this year. No Shadur Sanders, no Travis Hunter, and the star power and the lust of Colorado is sort of diminished here in 2025. Dion is still going to do Dion things. They're going to win some games they shouldn't. Maybe it's an upset-ridden game here. I don't think so. I think the Sun Devils win that one. And then Arizona. Really, apart from the fact that this is a rivalry game, I don't really see a way that Arizona State loses this one. I think they're more talented. I think they're better coached. Look, I'm not knocking on Jed Fish, but I like Kenny Dillingham more. And they're losing Tet McMillan, really dynamic weapon that I think could have been a piece to challenge the secondary this year. So all of that being said, 10-2 is where I got the Sun Devils. I do think this is one of the more talented teams in the Big 12 Conference, and I think there could be a logjam towards the top here. But with all they have coming back with everything they did last season, I think this is going to be another really good bunch to watch, and I think they can absolutely do what they did last year again in 2025, make the playoff, possibly even make a deeper run. Thanks for watching this video. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and we'll see you later on with another prediction video. Goodbye.